On the topic of professional communication, we are gone from speaking about what communication is and the keywords around that of the sender and the receiver and the message and the noise and what kind of symmetric and asymmetric communication to talk more about how it is used in a professional way. And these are from my talks and educational lessons in the seminary for pedagogy students, the former years. And they were just like the keywords that I have been gathering for them out of the reading they have been doing. And so, professional communication is when you use it as a tool for your work with humans. Mostly, it is with kids for the people I was educating, but it can be for nurses, people who work with elderly people, handicap, sports union, anyone who has a journalist who has a big contact sphere and big contact area with humans has to really be aware of the professional communication and how it is used. Professional communication is to use your language in your profession in a way that makes sense for the ones who are receiving it. And it is very conscious and well chosen in the way you use it. And it uses arguments that are rooted in science and common understandings so that you do not speak out of your own mind or feelings or whatever you think is right or wrong. So you have to be rooted in the profession you are working with and in order to use the professional communication. And so imagine yourself sitting with a nurse and she's explaining for you why they're putting you through this and that, and she will use some terms from terminology from the field of medicine, and she will explain to you something about how this affects the body or how this and that can have a good relation to what else you are suffering or something like that. The same goes when you talk to parents and kids and colleagues. You have like to understand what kind of dynamics of development and troubles and hindrances is in the way of the persons you are dealing with and how to apply it in a way that makes sense. In that professional communication, there is an aspect that's very important, and that's empathy. And it means the ability to understand, recognize, and put yourself in the feet of the other person. So it's like you're really relating to the other person's feelings and how that situation is impacting that person. It's called empathy. And empathy is different from sympathy and different from apathy. Sympathy is where you sympathizes with a person or more. It's like some boy hit the other boy, and you sympathize with the one who got hit. And you have like a kind of antipathy against the one who did the hitting. You don't like the violence he went out and did. Or maybe the thief, she stole the candy from the other girl. And you do not like that, so you sympathize with the girl who lost the candy. But empathy means that even though you sympathize with one part, you have the empathy and understanding for the feeling of both. And that's not an easy thing. And empathy does not mean that you agree on what this person has been doing. You just agree on the shared feeling that they are having in that moment. So you can feel sorry for them or understand why they are doing what they're doing, not necessarily agreeing that it is right and correct and the right choice. And so empathy becomes also a part of professional communication in many ways, especially in social sciences. There is another side that has been very important for us to explain as well, and for people who work in these fields to understand. And that is when they're working in a field with many people, they have to think of what we call the three P's: the private, personal, and professional way of interacting with your surroundings. And that it is very important to guard your private and to be very professional in your approach and to have that space of personal relation to what you are doing without getting too involved, so it takes out of the space of the privacy that you have. How to understand all this? It takes time, and it takes cases and a lot of talk, and some work. That's why there are schools for these issues, because people go and try to understand, well, how does this really go? But basically you can say that everything in your private sphere should be held out of your professional sphere. So if you at home like fatty food and you are in a professional relation where you have to make healthy food, it does not go to bring your private likings with you to that work and say, well, I like this fatty food. This is what we're going to do. We're going to do the work professionally, which fits the kids or the people we're working with. And the personal one is that you can relate and attach yourself from your private life and your private experiences to that situation that's happening in front of you. But at the same time, not taking it with you home, for instance, or dragging somebody from your private life into that situation. Keep it work related, keep it professional, as they say. And that's the rationalization of institutions that I've been talking about in the book of sociology. It is the way we deal with things because we do not have a personal attachment to him. It's not your mom or friend or closest ally or love of your life who is taking care of you. It is some stranger. You are a stranger to all these kids, and basically you're just there to do a work. And what work is that? Make them grow and develop and become independent and become good citizens. Okay, easy thing, no problem at all. And it goes over 7 or 8 or 9 or 10 years, so you have a lot of time of communicating. And that makes it sometimes difficult. So some professionals, they get so attached that they involve their private life in that, or maybe take their problems home. Some workers, social workers and pedagogical staff that goes and work with people with different psychological trouble or maybe physical handicap, they can be attached in that way that when they go home, they cannot forget about this girl or boy who has been suffering from a kind of mental illness or physical handicap or other things that's related. And they take it home and talk about it in the evening and on the dinner table and whatever. And I remember once a funny story that one teacher, the students told me that one teacher had been there in the class and told them, talked about like a method. What was it? It was called, I think it was called the method of SMITE, SMITE. It's a way of doing some kind of reports that use the SMITE. And so she told them, when you go home at dinner, so you have to repeat and understand the SMITE model. And then one lady who had been experienced in work life, she jumped up and said, well, my man is a fisherman and has not much education, so how do you imagine I'm sitting there at the dinner table talking SMITE with him? And everybody starts like wondering and laughing a little bit. And they told me about that story later because I had a really great relationship to that class. So we could sometimes talk confidentially or open-minded. And so to take the work, study, whatever with you home is a wrong thing to do. Keep your private life guarded from that professional life of yours. And keep your professional out of the private. And so keep the personal attachment between the private and the professional open to new experiences and to take experiences with you to your work. It can be like you are in your spare time out with your family and you see a situation in front of you that resembles something at work. And that makes you think, whoa, I could use that way, or I could apply that method, or maybe it could be a new kind of developing new kind of technology, maybe anything that could be you've been seeing there randomly, and then you come to think of your work, and so you go and try to apply it the next day. No problem in that. You are personal because you're using your experience as a whole, as a professional and as a private person, to apply it into your work. But do not keep dragging private and professional work in each other. And that's very important to keep separated, especially in places where people might be able to know each other a lot. I've been working places where everybody almost knows everybody else in that area. And so imagine that you go home and you start talking about some kid or some girl or somebody in there from the work with your family relatives, or maybe pointing finger at someone. Of course, it's forbidden by the law, but in small communities, people could be doing that, or maybe caring too much. You cannot care too much, but caring all the time without being able to do a difference is not gonna help. That would just drain you and make you burned out. And I've seen these examples, and my students had told me of some of these examples from their real life. This former mentioned lady and one more, they told two very beautiful stories in that relation, that they had this experience, that they couldn't forget about that girl who had this and that trouble, and they kept thinking of her for months and wanting to do something, but then they felt drained and helpless because they couldn't do anything. She was in a situation where she needed another kind of help. And so these are the three P's: the private, personal, and professional, that should be in balance, and the two of them kept out of each other. Because if you mingle them, it can lead to conflicts or a kind of outburn. You will be overcharged personally and in stress. It will disturb your private life maybe, and then it can also lead to some kind of abandonment altogether. So that's why they talk about separating it. Then there is this very beautiful so-called Johari window that is called from that is basically from the studies in HR, and I've had these courses before, where you have to relate to yourself and others by using these four gaps of windows: the open area, the blind area, the unknown area, and the private area. The open area is where you write information about you that you know and others know. The blind area is information about you that you don't know, but you think others know. And that should be somebody else who write it. Like, it can be your friend and your partner or somebody who knows you that can write in that area. You are also welcome to write down some of the things you think that these people might know about you, but you are not sure you know about yourself. And it's difficult to do that, but basically you get an eye-opener where somebody writes something about you you haven't written on your own. And the private area is information about you you think that others do not know. You don't have to write all personal matters. We are not sitting in a therapy area, or we are not sitting in such kind of work relation where you need to get everything out to the minus detail. It is just a kind of approach to get to learn each other by knowing oneself, and to get a professional communication relation that can work out. And then there is the unknown area, information that neither you or the others seems to know. And that one stays open for anyone who would challenge it or go in and say, well, there is something here nobody has seen, but I think is in you, or you find out something from the blind area that correlates with the one in the private area, and then you write it down. And mostly it's in the subconscious, that area, the hidden field. Sometimes they just leave it as something that's under the surface and not really known. And what does this help in communication? It helps in such manners that you become more aware of your limits, your private limits, the open areas, and how others perceive them as well. Sometimes you can go about and think, well, my private area is so big and the things everybody else knows about me is so small, and you get surprised when you go to the blind area and you see that people has actually written a lot they think they know about you, or they know about you without you knowing that they know. And so that changes your perception of things and can maybe bring you together, or change the behavior in the communication between people, especially in the work of groups or teamwork. The professional communication is also actively it's actively, um, what can you say, occupied by active listening. And active listening has different ways to it. It is a way that you should maybe know a little bit about. I'm not sure if it's coming later. I will just see. Active listening. Nope, I didn't have it with me here. Maybe I can talk about it in another video. But it's basically to adjust yourself to listen actively to the conversation or the talk somebody is giving you. And that means that you are focusing on them also with your eye and your body, and you're not occupied with something else, as we see some people can do. And you ask related question, and you feel engaged in that story they are telling you by trying to identify some things you couldn't understand, or make them say something once more. How was it you said? How did they tell that to you? Did they really do so? Was it where was that? Which day? Or what did you so do when that happened? Okay, I understand what you are saying, and how did you go on from that? And all this is a kind of active listening where you activate a lot of your understanding for that person, and show that professional attitude that you have to have with you all the time. And it is also related to what it's called recognition and acceptance. In your communication with your colleagues and the people you're working with, you have an approach that is mostly taken by a recognition of the other and their boundaries, and an acceptance of their value as humans. So you do not use communication as a professional to miscredit and misuse your position towards somebody else, or to be a judge over their talk and story, unless they are asking you to go into it, or maybe you have that natural role of the one who needs to correct the issues. You will be all the same, be recognizing their life, their story, their situation, and accepting what they are telling you on their own premises. That doesn't mean it's true. There's a big difference of accepting the communication and believing that it is true. And so the five principles for good communication as a professional is to see the resources in what you are listening to and the positive sides, and then try to find out what is missing to open up the blind spots in that communication, and to have an interest in the other person and to understand that person better, and to show acceptance for the other's feelings and the way they are expressing things, that you are concrete and very clear in the way you state your mind and or what's needed to be done, and you use professional terminology. So by doing those things, you will be showing that you are a true professional and not just someone who can just talk and listen in a random manner. In the same communication is a very important side as well of it. This is called the transaction analysis. And that's a strange word for what it is really about. It is what they say that it is the parent, child, and grown up sides of communication. And these are very good to know when you are studying these things, or wanna understand what's going on in front of you. And it's like the parent, the child, the grown up situations and communication. You can act childishly to that situation you are in, and you can be acting like a parent, and you can act like a grown up. And I remember I gave a lot of cases to my students that they had to act on as a child, and act on as a parent, and as a grown up. And in some of these cases, they had to choose to be a grown up, speaking to a grown up, like an equal transaction of communication, and not being the parent. So how is this to be understood? And they failed a lot of times, especially some of those who weren't really aware of the ways we communicate. But some were also really good at distinguishing immediately between the ways they talk. And so this is like the parent we all know what a parent is. They will tell you moral stories. They will tell you what's right and wrong. They will make sure you're doing things in the right way. They are like giving moral orders, and they are telling you what's right and wrong from their perspective. As grown-ups, the perspective of the child, if you are acting childishly, is maybe you divert your attention from the communication or laugh at it or take it less than serious, and maybe come with a funny comment or something that's not related, or just accept it as it is, even though it needs a kind of attention. And the grown up, mature communication is the communication that, of course, is the preferred one. It is where you speak grown up to grown up or person to person without being childish, neither a parent who is trying to state the orders on what to do and not to do, and what's right and what's wrong. And how is that actually carried out in examples? If you are speaking as a parent to someone, you will be having with you a lot of care and a lot of criticism. You will be judging. This is not the place to put your cup. You know that this area has to be clean. This is the rules. Have you forgotten? This is like you are caring, but you're also criticizing, and you have a judgmental way of speaking. That's the parent. And the child will be, if you are a child reacting to that kind of parent, you'll say, oh, yes, yeah, I didn't know, or maybe I had to run out and play, and you do not really relate to what you have to do, but you go out and speaking about something else, or you just, in many ways, like lose the attention in that talk, or maybe relate to it as a child would do by saying, well, what's the problem in that? And so the grown up to grown up communication would be that I almost tipped your cup off the place there, because it's there where we usually walk, and it can sometimes be difficult when there is a cup just right there. And then the other will respond, it's very true, it's not the right place to put it, and I will look to that, I will be careful where to put it next time, or that I will find a better place for it, and or I was in a hurry and had to leave it, and you're totally right, this isn't the right place. And that's the mature communication you can have in those issues.